A few months later than originally planned, Formula 2 will be kicking off its 2020 season this weekend with the first round in Austria at the Red Bull Ring. In fact, the next round after will also be at the Red Bull Ring, followed by another round at the Hungaroring just a week after. Basically put, Formula 2 will be with Formula 1 the entirety of the mid-year restart of motor racing, with 8 rounds in just over 2 months across Europe. But unlike Formula 1, Formula 2 will still have 2 races per weekend, meaning that drivers will be pushed to the absolute limit doing 16 races in just 9 weeks, a series first and most likely last. So while I can't sit here and speculate how the rest of the calendar will play out, I am able to give you a rundown of every team and driver that will be looking to turn this year of misfortune into an opportunity to become champions of Formula 2. If you're looking for an introduction to Formula 2 itself, the following videos and links will help out. But for everybody else, let's get started. First up are last year's champions and the team with easily the most controversial lineup, French racing outfit DAMS. DAMS themselves have been a powerhouse team for decades now, with their participation in the step just below Formula 1 going back all the way to F3000 in the late 1980s. But despite winning the team's title last year, they haven't managed to grab the top step with a driver since Jolyon Palmer back in 2015, when the series was still called GP2. This year, their lineup features 2 well-known drivers for basically all the wrong reasons. Driving car number 1 is Sean Galal, who, while very popular in his home country of Indonesia, has yet to make any impact at the step just below Formula 1, despite racing there since 2015. With a best finish of 2nd place in all of that time, all eyes will be on him to see whether or not he'll finally be up to the task of racing at this level, or forever be labelled as the guy with the KFC sponsorship. Alongside him in the number 2 car is Daniel Ticktum, who for a lot of people needs no introduction. With his past incidents forever hanging on his shoulders and his frequent outbreaks with the media and drivers alike, Ticktum hasn't exactly painted himself well during his career. But you don't win Macau twice in a row for no reason, and Ticktum has throughout his career shown incredible pace. If he can only switch off his antics when he's not behind the wheel, Ticktum could easily be one of the drivers most likely to win the title, but it really does depend on his attitude at the time. The next team on the list is 2nd place finishers Virtuosi Racing, who, despite not existing anywhere near as long as DAMS, have shown incredible consistency since joining GP2 back in 2015. You might remember them better as the team that took over the reins at Russian Time, forwarding the outfit to teams champions in 2017. With Russian Time exiting the sport last year, the team reverted to its previous name to once again race as Uni Virtuosi Racing. In Car 3 will be Guan Yu Zhou, who will race with the team for a 2nd year. Zhou originally had a very up and down career before joining Formula 2, but immediately found his footing, taking 5 podiums with the team and becoming Rookie of the Year by some margin. Now it's make or break for the Chinese driver, who has his eyes set on a drive with the Renault Formula 1 team, but he's going to have to start winning races to make it a reality. Driving alongside him in the number 4 car is Callum Ilott. Ilott was one of the handful of drivers who jumped from karting into Formula 3 a few years back, when it was still allowed, but never really rivaled the results of those like Max Verstappen in doing so. His Formula 2 season last year was very hit and miss, with results all over the place, but with 2 sprint race podiums and a pole position to his name, he has shown that he can drive fast if he tries. Next is another hugely successful French-based racing team, ART Grand Prix. Easily the most successful team at this level of competition, especially since the last 2 champions of Formula 2 have won with this team. But their 2020 lineup consists of 2 Formula 2 rookies, so everybody will be waiting to see if their hubris pays off. First up is Marcus Armstrong, who has arguably been getting better and better with every year of racing under his belt. That said, his 2nd place in F3 last year may look good on paper, but he was still a massive 50 points behind the eventual champion. Nonetheless, Armstrong's aggression behind the wheel has been one of his tricks of the trade, so hopefully that aggression can transfer well into Formula 2. Equally as hyped up is his teammate in the number 6 car, Christian Lundgaard, who, would you believe it, is in only his 4th year of single-seater racing. Lundgaard smashed his way onto the scene back in 2017, winning 2 Formula 4 championships on debut, with a decent follow-up with a 2nd place in Formula Renault the next year. But while his single year in F3 last year started with a win being taken away from him, he never really looked like a title contender from then on out. Given his affiliation with the Renault Formula 1 team then, it's obvious his aim for the year will be to beat Guan Yu Zhou as the best Renault Junior in the final standings, and hopefully start to show some of his previous career's glory. Feeder Series juggernaut Carlin takes up the mantle as the 4th team we'll be looking at. While other teams have mostly stuck to the same few series, Trevor Carlin's outfit has competed in just about everything under the sun, from IndyCar to Formula 4. But with the team stretched so thin, its results have not been consistent, with Formula 2 being no exception. Still, as the team finished first back in 2018 and fourth in 2019, it would be ridiculous to count them out in 2020, especially with two Red Bull-backed juniors in its stable. First up is Honda's most successful protege in recent years, Yuki Tsunoda, who joins Formula 2 after a slow but strong end to his Formula 3 debut last year with what was essentially a backmarker team. Tsunoda's issues since coming to Europe in 2019 have been plain to see, as the Japanese driver consistently qualified poorly. His strength, on the other hand, was his ability to turn those poor grid positions into finishes in the points. If he wants any chance of keeping Honda's dream alive this year, then he will need to get used to qualifying in Formula 2 and fast. Jehan Daruvala comes into this year on a low, with the Indian driver's Formula 3 season last year starting out strong, before eventually fizzling out to lose second place in the standings to the previously mentioned Marcus Armstrong by a single point at the last hurdle. Previously, Daruvala never really stood out in a major way, as he would often finish high up in the order at various championships, but never really taking any silverware in the process. So if he can recapture that pace he had at the start of 2019, his transition to Formula 2 should go just as well. Campos Racing is another team that has had its fingers in a lot of pies in the past, but nowadays only really competes in a handful of competitions, with Formula 2 being one of those. The team hasn't been known for its success in recent years, but last year's performance with one driver in particular has seen the team become a potential fighting force that may well continue in 2020. The driver in question, Jack Aitken, will continue with the team for another year. Aitken has had one of the longest careers on the grid and has always been there or thereabouts in his performances over the years, but those kinds of results aren't what put a driver in a championship winning position. His debut year in Formula 2 as George Russell's teammate in 2018 saw him pale in comparison to the eventual champion, but the way he was able to bring Campos to glory last year should hopefully bring more confidence to not only himself but the team as well. The first real unknown of the grid will be driving the other orange car, Guillaume Somaya. It's no question that from the outside, Somaya's inclusion on the grid is a bit odd, especially given the Brazilian has hardly raced in the past few years, and nowhere near the level of Formula 2 at that. Nor does he have the results to really back up such a move either, but Campos signed him up after testing with the team at the end of last year, so all we can do is wait and see what he can do. A return to their roots now with the next team on the list, Haro's Racing System. If you watched any amount of racing last year, you'll know this team had the prefix Sauber Junior team, but this has changed for 2020. Though still relative newcomers to Formula 2, Haro's has a long history in all sorts of other categories, so they have the capacity to do well if paired with a decent driver or two. First up on the roster is one of the more experienced drivers on the field, Louis Delétraz. The Swiss has now been at this level of competition since 2016, which coincidentally was the last time he won a race too. In Formula 2, Delétraz has had splashes of talent here and there, but has so far yet to really make an impact over the course of an entire season. With the Haas badge sewn onto his suit in 2020, Delétraz will have to aim for nothing less than the championship to prove he has what it takes. After two decent but not exactly groundbreaking seasons at the Formula 3 level, Pedro Piquet will step up to Formula 2 as Delétraz's teammate in the number 12 car. Unlike his teammate though, there isn't that same pressure for Piquet to perform in his debut season. Still, standing out is still key for any driver, and if Piquet can make a smooth enough transition to Formula 2 machinery, he may well give his more experienced teammate a run for his money. Now for the team behind cars 14 and 15, we have MP Motorsport. Though the Dutch-based team has had success in the lower formula like Formula Renault and Formula 4, their attempts at greatness at the Formula 2 level haven't exactly gone to plan. With numerous driver changes each season, the team should hopefully be aiming for less of that with such a smaller season in 2020. Nobuharu Matsushita shouldn't be a new name to a lot of people, as he was teammate to then GP2 champion Stoffel Vandoorne way back in 2015. But in terms of performance, the Japanese driver hasn't exactly covered himself in glory, and though he has won a few races at this level before, he's never been consistent enough to fight for titles, especially with his tendency to overwork his tyres. Still, if MP Motorsport needed a safe pair of hands with lots of relevant experience, the team can't go wrong with him, though they shouldn't expect him to drag them to the top. His teammate, on the other hand, is the complete opposite in terms of experience. A few years have passed now since Filipe Drugovich had one of the most dominant performances of his career, winning 14 of 16 races in the 2018 Euroformula Open Championship. But his follow-up to Formula 3 left a lot to be desired, with the Brazilian only scoring once in last year's championship. A move to Formula 2 seems incredibly ill-advised, but it's hard to argue that with his previous results, he can't make something work. Just whether or not he can do it in a single season with a less than stellar team remains to be seen. Now for the first new team of the season, though in essence they're a continuation of a partnership from last year, hence their position on the team standing, it's HWA Racelab. The team has a long and successful history in DTM, but has more recently made efforts into single-seaters, starting with Formula E and Formula 3 last year, with 2020 being their proper debut in Formula 2. And who else would a new team hope to have compete for them than a fan favourite with buckets of experience, Artem Markelov. Markelov's addition to the grid is about as expected as tyres to be used at some point over the weekend, with the Russian first joining GP2 all the way back in 2014. Clearly his aims aren't for Formula 1 glory, and if they are, then they're based on delusions. So it's his experience in the car that HWA need, and it doesn't hurt that he gets to drive fast cars while he's at it. Giuliano Alesi will be looking to distance himself from his performances last year, with the French driver making very little impact in his rookie season. Admittedly, he was with a backmarker team, but mistakes were far too common in the opening few rounds as he transitioned from a few good seasons in GP3. A switch to a new team might be exactly what he needs to reignite his career, but he's going to have to put a lot of effort in to improve upon 2019. Onto the elephant in the room, the team that in every right should be much higher up, but has for the past 2 seasons failed miserably at emulating previous successes, Prema Racing. The Italian squad has been a dominant force in basically every championship they touch. In fact, fans might remember that they took the team's title and first and second in the Drivers' Championship back in 2016. But since taking Charles Leclerc to the title in 2017, the team has only seen worse and worse results. Arguably this is due to its lineup post-2017, but it's no mistake that the team needs to perform this year, and they're hoping to succeed with 2 Ferrari Juniors. Driving the number 20 is possibly the most hyped driver in recent memory, Mick Schumacher. It would be hard to argue that Schumacher didn't have a rough introduction to Formula 2 last year, with the German driver being pretty absent all year long apart from a win at the Hungaroring. But one thing to keep in mind is that so far in his career, he's always had an average first season followed by a title run the following year. And this has been the case in both Formula 4 and Formula 3. So will it happen again? Only time will tell, but with a name like his, the world will be watching regardless. His biggest competition will be from his Ferrari stablemate, Robert Schwartzman. Schwartzman's career has gone from strength to strength, with the momentum peaking last year when he took the Formula 3 title by 50 points to his nearest competitor. This run of success might end up being the Russian's downfall, however, as he'll need to immediately be up to speed if he wants to leapfrog the Ferrari hopeful for a potential Formula 1 ride in the future. If there's any driver worth keeping an eye on, it's Schwartzman. And finally, we reach the team who finished last in the team's standings in 2019, Trident. There's honestly not a lot to say that probably hasn't already been said about this team, but from a statistics point of view, the team is the worst on the grid. While they've had success in GP3 and Formula 3, their efforts in Formula 2 have never been a success. So let's have a look at who will be driving for them this year. First up is Roy Nissany, who actually missed out on any racing in 2019 due to sustaining an injury. As for previous results, don't expect much from the Israeli, who struggled to find his way into the points the last time he took part in Formula 2. Still, he is signed up as a test driver for Williams this year, so maybe time in the car might bring out more speed, but it remains to be seen if that could truly change his pace. His teammate, Marino Sato, is a little harder to read. While he did take part in Formula 2 towards the end of last year with Campos and scored no points, he did finish every race, and this is a running theme of his career up until now. Still, I wouldn't expect too much from the Japanese driver, but perhaps he can build upon his ability to not retire and maybe grab a point or two. So are we all done? Nope, we have one more second newcomer, and the only actual newcomer since HWA simply took over an older team. That's right, Hitech GP will be entering another championship, bringing the Formula 2 grid up to 22 cars. As a new team to the category, it's hard to gauge where they'll fit into the current grid, but given their successes elsewhere, it's hard to see them stuff it up, and they've managed to grab a pair of drivers that might just make that a reality. You'd be forgiven if you thought that Nikita Mazepin is joining Formula 2 for the first time in 2020, as he had a completely anonymous rookie debut last year with the best finish of 8th place. Obviously, with Hitech, he'll be hoping to massively improve upon that, especially since the Russian has been linked to various Formula 1 teams over the years. So it's not a matter of scoring points for him in 2020, it's getting actual results. And the final driver of 2020 is one of the most experienced, Luca Giotto, driving the number 25. Giotto isn't expected to compete in every round of the year as he has other duties to attend to, but make no mistake, the Italian driver has built up quite a reputation of being fast when he wants to. While he may be past his prime at a shot for Formula 1 at this point, his experience and success so far will be a great benchmark for the Hitech team to learn from. That's if he can stop making silly mistakes that have plagued his chances at a title run in the past. And that's all for now. Let's hope there are no more delays or disruptions in the year so that we can see the next generation of Formula 1 drivers really battle it out. Of course, everything I've said is merely my own observations from watching these drivers rise up through the ranks for many years. And perhaps I might have sounded more harsh on some rather than others, but it's because I want to see all 22 of these drivers compete with one another to a high degree that any driver underperforming seems like a waste. But that's all from me. Hopefully I've been able to give you some insight into the teams and drivers of Formula 2 this year. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on these types of videos, and if you want to see more, consider subscribing. My name's Jacob, and as always, until next time, goodbye.